Hi, I'm Krista Campbell. Thank you for joining us today for City of Raleigh, Saving Thousands with Web-Based Workflows. In today's webinar, Chris Starling will share how and why the City of Raleigh transitioned from desktop-based to web-based workflows. Chris is a business process analyst at the City of Raleigh. He is the IT Pipes administrator, supports the administration of Cityworks, and helps to document business processes along with a variety of additional activities. Like many of you, Chris works in many different roles. Chris has been great to work with, and in getting to know him, I found out that he has no prior experience with GIS. This was really interesting to me. Recently, he told me that if a software solution didn't work with GIS, it didn't belong in public utilities. Of course, I really like this. You guys that have attended our webinars before know that I'm a big advocate for GIS. Since learning about GIS, Chris and the teams he works with have championed it and had made great progress at the city. Joining Chris today for our webinar, part of the QA session is going to be Corey Chris, President and CEO of IT Pipes, and Jonathan Hayes, Solution Support Expert. So be sure to get your questions in. I hope you enjoy the webinar. I want to talk a minute about partnering for success. This webinar focuses on the success the City of Raleigh has had with their pipe inspection program. You're going to hear from Chris how Esri, IT Pipes, and Cityworks technology helped them to be successful. Partnerships built in our community, Esri, it really means a lot to me. I work with a lot of our partners. I talk to a lot of our customers. I'd like to just take a minute to say thank you to IT Pipes for being an Esri partner since 2011. They've always worked really well with the Esri water practice, and their work implementing web mapping to support our customers, it's making a difference every day. And you're going to hear a little bit about this from Chris. Now let's hear how the City of Raleigh has moved off of desktops and into the web. Chris?
Thank you, Krista. All
No
right,
problem.
just kind of a brief overview of kind of where we're going today. Obviously talking about Cityworks, GIS, IT Pipes, and we'll give you a little background on Raleigh, some of the challenges, some of the things we've put in place, the benefits, and obviously we're not perfect. We have not arrived. We still got things to do to make us better, and some of the things we got on our action list going forward. And then if there's any questions, we'll have a time for Q&A. So the City of Raleigh, we are a city municipality governed by our city council. However, we're in a unique situation. Several years ago, 6 merger towns that surround us are where their underground assets were assigned to us, and we assumed ownership of them and were required to maintain them. So while you may say, hey, this is the City of Raleigh, we really cover about 2/3 of the county and have a large swath of responsibility. So I'm a member of what we call here in public utilities, the Technology Application Group. This was formed in 2013 when we made a commitment to use Cityworks. There are 4 members of this team besides myself. As Krista said, I have no formal IT background or GIS background. I developed a GIS approach at the Cityworks conference during the plenary when they gave I'm sure it's been done hundreds of times, about Cityworks as a platform. And I'm like, I don't understand fully what this is, but this is where we need to go. And I didn't understand GIS more than beyond a map at that point. But I'm like, the software doesn't interact with this. We don't need to use it. And as we've grown and learned, I'm glad we made that stand and that mantra, and we learned that early, even though we had no idea what we were talking about. And it served us well. We were able to not have certain things in our software tool set that didn't fully integrate with the GIS. And if it integrates with GIS, it's going to integrate Cityworks and IT Pipes. So our goal was having a dedicated team that was focused on maintaining Cityworks. We have a separate team that maintains the GIS side of the house. And what they do is they maintain the public utilities data set, and other large departments have a very similar group, and then they all put that up to the city data set. And we operate kind of similarly. We handle the Cityworks side for public utilities, and there's an IT component that does the database administration for Cityworks. So as mentioned before, we have three products, 3 tools in our toolbox, and we've obviously Esri providing the asset inventory, and way more than that, and then Cityworks and IT pipes. And our goal with these 3 was to leverage them together. They all have individual strong points. They obviously are there for a reason, right? You don't pick 3 things because they all do the same thing, but each one of them has a very strong set of tools that use it for a particular purpose. And we're like, how can we use these 3 together to create efficient workflows and create efficiencies and promote asset management? So the first one of those is obviously Esri. We began back in the early 2000s. I haven't been able to find anyone who was here when that was brought in. And our mapping group still uses desktop in a lot of ways. I've moved on to pretty much ArcGIS Pro and web maps. And the web maps have been great. We use them. Our GIS group is really cool because they let us actually modify and add assets. I know that's not the norm everywhere else, but when I integrated another group, they set up the assets for me. I would go to the web map, pop down the assets where they belonged, refresh Cityworks, build templates. That was great. We also use this for our CCTV crews. When they find missing manholes and missing mains, they can call back to the office, and someone in sewer can create that line for them, create that manhole for them, and they can go and keep working. And then our GIS group, because we do use the network side, we keep everything connected so we can do modeling and different things. And then our GIS folks will take that created asset and connect it properly. And the web app allows us to get what we need of having that facility ID in Cityworks. So the next one is Cityworks. We started in 2013. The city started a little earlier with this, and then when they did an upgrade, they decided, hey, we should bring this out to the whole city. And we went live in 2016, and we started with a fresh start. We had an old system called Hanson, and that had become corrupted, and really the data was not very trustworthy. So we just decided, hey, we're going to start fresh, and we used those 3 years to get all of our integration set up. We did a lot of process mapping. We understood Cityworks was going to fundamentally change how we did work. So we wanted to make sure that we had our heads wrapped around this issue. We were really ready to utilize all the benefits. We started off with Cityworks Server. That's one of the reasons why we waited about a year or so to get off of that desktop arena and onto web app. And that's a common theme. We like things in websites because since we're not IT, we oftentimes don't have, oftentimes when you say, hey, these computers had to be loaded with this software, it makes things slower. It just creates more problems. If everything's in a website, it makes things operate a lot easier as far as deploying things. We're currently on 15.2. We do have some cross-departmental workflows with our streets group. We send them a service request whenever we need a patch job after we've repaired something, and that's working really, really well. And we, like I mentioned, we have a database administration team working with Cityworks, and they do all the upgrades, and they have a similar mindset to us, upgrading for the point of upgrading. As long as the upgrade's safe and it's stable, we're going to upgrade, take advantage of new benefits and new enhancements. Beyond the IT pipes integration, we do have a pretty cool one with our ERP system, PeopleSoft. This allows us to requisition things from Cityworks, and then when they go to the warehouse, it automatically receives into their storeroom, and it also updates all of the labor costs in Cityworks. So that's working pretty well for us. So IT pipes, last but not least, is again, this software was here before I got here, and I was never really assigned to be the administrator of IT pipes. I believe I inherited it, which is fine. It's worked out great, and I've been able to help those guys. And we've upgraded as we've gone along. We've added sync, we added the GIS tools. Recently, we've moved to IT Pipes Web, and we're currently beta testing the IT Pipes Mobile, and we've got that on a couple trucks, and that's working pretty well as well. So a challenge, so we have these 3 tools. That's great. And that's certainly step 1, right? Having the tools in the toolbox. So now Cityworks is how we dispatch. It's how we assign all the work. So we pick the asset, create the work order. We now know who's going to work on it, when they're going to work on it, what they're going to work on, and that's all great. However, the CCTV guys do most of their work inside IT pipes. How do we get the work to them? How do we train everybody in IT pipes and say, hey, go create that inspection? How is that going to be accomplished? And there's also a second challenge of how do we then get that work? So, for example, we wanted to get out of, we didn't want to create an exception because all of our operations folks were getting work orders. That was their to-do list for the day. We wanted the same thing for CCTV. We didn't want emails. We didn't want Post-it notes. We didn't want napkins. But once you got that, now that you could direct them to go work and they could do their work at IT pipes, how do you extract that out? How do you pull that information back? How do you say, hey, here's the video, here's this? And the integration allowed us to not have to, it really saved us a lot of time on the CCTV crew because the software would handle the access to the information. Before we had abused Dropbox, we had DVDs, have hard drives. It was very slow and very painful to get that information out. So that was our other challenge. So even before we could integrate to Cityworks, there were several things that we had to do and wanted to do to bring our system up to date and ready for that Cityworks integration. So up to this point, as I alluded to earlier, all of our data was either stored on the trucks or in stacks of hard drives. And hopefully it got loaded into a supervisor's computer, but it didn't happen consistently. We lost data, computers crashed, and we had information everywhere. We need to get this information in one place. And Cityworks was a great motivator because it's like, hey, you only got so much time before something's going to need to hook up to this. So we wanted to get all this. So our first step was to get a server. Pre-server was painful and slow, like I said, and only one PC had QA/QC capabilities. So as I alluded to before, getting ready for Cityworks. So having a server was the first step, and then we needed to get all of that data off of the trucks into this central safe location, and we needed to do that on a regular, repeatable process. Our first iteration was, we got server set up. That was great. We used sync. This eliminated the Saturday time to retrieve data. We were less reliant on SneakerNet and more reliant on the server and sync. And I'll get into more of this later, but then we started adding some GIS into the trucks so we can make sure that we were getting good data back. And we still had a manual cleanup, and we still have some of that to this day. And ArcMap on the trucks was, was very valuable because now we were getting those true unique IDs of what the assets were and not creating so many fake IDs. And if you took a tour of our data today, you would still see some of those fake IDs. So sync is really what, server was a big part. Sync was probably even a bigger part of getting all of our data collected. Before sync, we have an operator come in, and that was done throughout the day or throughout the week if somebody needed a particular video. And before sync and server, we really had no way to catalog or index except on that one computer. So upgrading the sync changed that entire process. The data automatically gets transferred off the truck and stored onto our servers. Originally it was every night, and I'll touch on this a little later, but we're working to get that after every inspection. That's our goal, is like after every inspection, being able to get those uploaded and not have a long sync time in the evening. So this also led us to a technology change where we went away from the installed truck computers and we moved to laptops. We did that for a couple reasons. One, the laptops were under lease, so they had a scheduled obsolescence. So they knew in 4 years, boom, they're getting a new laptop. This also allowed us to keep the computers out of the cold weather temperatures when trucks are parked. And it also gave us the ability to have a backup laptop. So if something happened, it might take us a little while, probably about 30 minutes to get that counter configured, and then they could be back up and running. So an hour downtime as opposed to how do you fix this built-in computer and answering those questions. So it was also with the new laptops, we set up our trucks with GIS Send, and this allowed us to, like I mentioned in the previous slide, this allowed us to select a particular asset and create an inspection where it wasn't abstract, it was more real, it was against a real asset. So we've upgraded some things. We now have sync, we now have server. We're now creating our inspections off of real assets. And now we can kind of close the loop with the full integration with Cityworks. So the way our integration works is anyone in our department has the ability to create work orders. Everyone in our department has a login, from the director to the engineer to the receptionist. We don't care who you are, you have the ability to log into Cityworks. And our engineers could go in there. So what they do is they go and select, hey, I want this pipe inspected. They would send it to the CCTV supervisor. They would submit it to him. Then the supervisor would prioritize that work, and he would select, because we have all of our trucks in Cityworks as users, and those usernames match what their name is in IT Pipes, that truck name, and what it is in sync. So he just submits it to that truck. Next time it syncs, it pulls down from Cityworks those available work orders to that truck and assigns them, as you can see here, as inspections, and it gives them the status, and you can give the work order number. And this solved our first challenge. It now allowed us to put the CCTV crews in the same operational workflow as everyone else. Now there's not some special process. There's different steps that are taking place, but overall, Cityworks is now the system of who's doing work, when is it supposed to be done, and where is it being done. And IT Pipes is still doing what it's always done, doing pipeline assessments, and their workflow really didn't change. They pretty much opened IT Pipes, do a sync before they leave the office. Everything's there. They can now go work, and when they hit complete, and we'll see the finishing end in a few slides of what it sends back. But at least we solved challenge one of being able to get work to the crews just like everyone else, and not have to create an exception for those guys. And this also gave great visibility, well, not visibility, but accessibility to the engineers. They could say exactly what pipe segment they wanted not the one behind the blue house next to the greenhouse. So that gave us that helped out the CCTV crews as well. So as I mentioned before, we had put ArcMap on the computers in hopes of, instead of just going to some line and making up a name or making up a number, they could now select the asset and make that inspection against that. We were now tying that together. So later on, if you're like, hey, I've got this pipe segment, great. I can now look at the data and see what's been done against it. Not against an address, because you might say it's 213 when it's really 221. And it's in the middle of nowhere, so who can really say, because there's no house with a number on it. So that really helped us. The other thing that we used was the GIS receive, which allowed us to take what was in our GIS database and send it to the pipeline database that's in IT pipes. And you really, really want to make sure, and this was our direction, and I would recommend this to anyone, is to, if you can, make sure that IT Pipes database matches what's in your GIS. You really want to make sure those mirror one another. That's our goal. That's what we're still working toward. Currently, I believe we have a Python script that, if there's something new in our GIS, it will update the IT Pipes database with the upstream, downstream manhole. Because that was one thing, a guy might enter the correct facility ID, but some of those attribute fields might be missing. So that Python script has really helped us clean those things up. And again, that's something our GIS group did, and appreciate that. With Cityworks, Cityworks had a map. Cityworks would send the work. So we then removed and reallocated those ArcMap licenses somewhere else, because we really want all of our field workers to really work off of a to-do list. We really don't want them in the habit. We want that work planned. We want it researched. We want, before it gets to them, we want it ready to roll. So, but that send and receive definitely helped us to get a hold of some of that data quality. So then we moved to web, and we'll show a little bit what they get from Cityworks, and they really enjoyed that. But then they're like, well, since we went live in 2016, all Cityworks is going to show you is what's been done through a Cityworks work order. All those work orders that had been done prior to, they were available, but not really accessible. So IT Pipes Web really helped us in that arena. And I'll show you this video here. So this is IT Pipes Web. We like it because, like Cityworks, like a lot of other things, it's a website. You can get to the inspection. You have all the information to the side. You can watch that video, and that's been really helpful, because before we had to use desktop, and that works fine, but IT Pipes Web is a lot faster, and it's easy to deploy. It's like, hey, go to this website, and done. So moving to IT Pipes Web allowed us to have all the inspections, regardless of Cityworks or not, to everyone. Updating the web, if you've never used IT Pipes, I would highly recommend starting with H264 before you even begin. If not, you're going to be in a data conversion. And I thought we had a lot of data until I talked to Jonathan, and he's had clients with bigger data sets. So I was thankful ours was where it was. It took us a couple days to get all that converted, but it's over. Once it's over, and then you can just move on from there, and it works pretty seamless. We were pretty fortunate. I just emailed someone about the map, and I said, I see sewer assets, and I got it within, I don't know, an hour or two, because there was already one existing, and I just plugged it in, because it's just using the Esri REST. So that was very easy. But if you don't have that map ready, and if that isn't the case, then that's something you'll definitely want to consider. But the map is very nice because, again, it ties those assets to, again, the common denominator. In our world, we call it a facility ID. IT Pipes calls it like a pipe segment. But anyway, it's a common number that we know that we're talking about the same pipe. Other than that, it was pretty painless. It was just, IT Pipes came in, set it up, and just hooked in those two things, our map and getting our videos upgraded. So again, the benefits: the planners, they can see they can review the work. They can go. They can also quickly see if work's been done, what work is still outstanding. Our engineers are really the predominant users, and they can get all of their data. They can select the map and see what inspections are being done in a certain area if they're doing a project. And the nice thing is that some of our engineers work on wastewater projects. Next week they're working on a water project. So again, a website. They can use it whenever they want to. Our repair crews, they generally use it out of the the Cityworks side, but they can. Everyone has access to this. I think we have about 50 users in it so far, and I'm just like, it's all read only. So if this helps you do your job, I'm happy to give you access. So our repair crews, as I mentioned before, cleaning crews, they can, if they're on a street, or they can use that map if they choose to use this. Generally, they would use the Cityworks portion, but they're not. Whichever tool is handiest, it's there available to them, and you can download the inspection data, provide it to contractors. That's been great, and I've trained our engineers on that, how to export that, and that's been very helpful. So now we can get work out of IT Pipes, and now IT Pipes Web kind of made it a self-service portal of some respects, and that they can just go to the website, get what they need. It's been less interaction on me and the CCTV crews, which is, I don't mind the interaction, but it's always great when folks can get the information they need, get it quickly, and not have to bother a lot of people. I think that's a good efficiency. So they began to say, man, we want this data more. We had emergency work orders we need to sync with. So we made the decision to outfit all of our trucks. We have about 6 trucks with cradle point modems. And you can't see it in these pictures, but there's a antenna on both of these trucks. And this allows us to have a pretty consistent cellular connection while out in the field. And not every operator is there, but I do have several operators who are, after every inspection, they're syncing right there in the field and moving all their videos to the server and moving on to the next one. So sometimes it just depends where you're at, how the cellular is doing, but overall it's been pretty successful. And again, we're just trying to add another layer of efficiency and just trying to make the program as best as we can. So to our shame, and again, we have things that we're working on. QA/QC, I believe, is being done, but it's more of a hit or miss. It's definitely not a conscientious decision. I believe some of our engineers look at things. And what's nice about IT Pipes Web, not only can you view things, but if you have certain permissions, you can go and update the observations. Like in this one here, this pipe's in pretty rough shape, but we found a fracture that was missed during the initial inspection. So I can't say that we're using this feature all the time. It is nice to know that the tool we already have can handle it. And this is something, one of our 2019 goals is to get more is to do this more often and make it more structured, and we don't have to go in and find another tool or figure out some other way to do it. We can do it right from the website, which I think is another efficiency. So this all, as mentioned before, Esri really is the backbone to it all. IT Pipes does a great job at pipeline assessment. Cityworks does a great job of saying, hey, where is it being done? How much is it costing? And Esri is our asset inventory. Everything is stored about that asset in our GIS. And Cityworks and IT Pipes are able to, we have integrations there, and everything's able to see. And that's really how we've envisioned it from the ground up. Is we would lay the bedrock with our GIS, and then everything else would just layer on top of it, able to see what everything can do. And one of our engineers is now looking at some decision-making software to take what is happening in IT Pipes and happening in Cityworks and making asset decisions with it. So definitely have to have that inventory of master record of assets. You really can't do any of this without that. To me, it'd just be really difficult otherwise. So here's part B of the answer of the challenge. So we had the challenge of getting work to Cityworks. That was solved by the interface. How do we get work out? IT Pipes Web is part A of that answer. Part B of that answer is Inspection Viewer. Inspection Viewer is a browser-based viewer that's launched from hyperlinks, and it's kind of like an IT Pipes Web Lite. But it's really nice because you don't have to download anything. We don't store any videos in Cityworks. Those are all still stored on the server where they belong. And it allows someone who submits a Cityworks work order to now go and view the results of their work. And here's a quick video of that. So down at the bottom of our work orders, you'll see a hyperlink in the universal custom fields. And I believe that hyperlink was a little obscured, but that was clicking on a hyperlink, and it just opens up a new window and launches that exact inspection. So you can watch the video, look at the pictures, look at the information. It's all there and available. So again, we didn't have to duplicate data. We didn't have to transfer data from IT Pipes to Cityworks. So we didn't require users to download it on their machines. So again, the workflow is pretty efficient. You can create the work order. The CCTV crew will do the work. The interface will populate the link. You can go take a look at it. Now, some may say, well, IT Pipes also has the ability to send over inspection data, and they do. If you go back to the beginning of where we were never really good with reports. Nobody ever said, hey, here's a report of that inspection. And they always said, hey, here's the video and here's the picture. So that's what our engineers and our folks got used to. And that's just what's expected. And I honestly think now in retrospect, it was the better way to go, because a report's not informing you. You're able to see the actual information straight from the CCTV truck, and you can make whatever decision, report whatever you need from that point. So speaking of reporting, which we're not very good at, we're trying to get better with that. And IT Pipes Web has smart filters, reporting. And while I don't do this on a day-to-day operation, I've had to do it on occasion. But what's nice about it is that you're able to take all this data in IT Pipes and able to sort it by, here we have it by CCTV truck. You can do it here. We have a tab for grade 5 defects. track hotspot line, identify candidates for CIPP work. And you're able to not have to rebuild those reports every time. You can change what columns you want. You can sort and group. And while doing this, we sorted by city and found amazingly there's 5 ways to spell the city of Raleigh. So using the find and replace tool, we were able to get that data cleaned up rather quickly. So in conclusion, this is really what we were after, and we really wanted a way for folks to be able to have access to CCTV crews, for them to do work, and we wanted a self-service portal, and lack of better words, for them to go see that information and get our guys away from burning DVDs, having Rube Goldberg methods for getting information out. We really wanted to be, hey, go do this work. It's been done. It's done against this asset. The asset's been affected. Here's what we found. And we did all this in the name of efficiency. We did all of this in the name of, can we cut down on the paper? Can we cut down on the risk of losing stuff? And I don't say this to sound like we're pious and, we have no need to save money. We always need to save money. But we've had ROI, but I don't have but that was never the quantifiable reason for doing it. So someone says, well, what's your reduction on this and that? I can say we've probably saved a pretty penny, but what that is, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that we no longer have a multi-day gap between someone needing inspections and getting the comprehensive info. Data is available across departments. Again, IT Pipes Web gives us that tool. We can be like, hey, here's a website, and or here's a link to the inspection that you need, or hey, here's the work order. You can go check out the link. And that's generally what our repair crews do. Our repair crews now can go to the parent work order, click the link, and see exactly what they're supposed to be repairing, and have a lot of information at their fingertips instead of having to go find someone to get that information. And this is again a screenshot of what the inspection looks like in the Inspect Viewer or IT Pipes web. And again, you can download it, look at all that. And we're really trying to move into a world of asset management instead of work management. We're trying to get to a world of where, how much is, what value is this pipe delivering? How much is it costing us to do that? And, what better methods are there to make sure that we have a great collection system that is, sustainable and cost efficient and provides value to our ratepayers who use it on a daily basis. And really what I've tried to instill is we're going to keep up with technology. We're going to keep upgrading. We're just going to keep driving success for the sake of just being the best for the sake of being the best. And our hope and goal is to move out of the state of surviving to the state of thriving. That's really where we're trying to go. I think we've crossed the border. I don't think we're living there yet, but we've definitely moved out of surviving. I can say we've packed the tent. At least we're across the state line on that one, and hoping to, set up and thrive and provide our engineers with information and make sure those who need and use this information have it available to them. So that's what that's where we've been. That's what we've done. And this is kind of where we're going. Again, QA/QC, that's one of the things we need to work on, getting our data to a better state of quality. We want to work on improving the teamwork around Esri, Cityworks, and IT Pipes in the form of a governance group. And I want to get the engineers and those who work in the capital improvement area working and communicating with those who operate the CCTV trucks. They're a huge stakeholder. I want those working closely together. That way we're not spinning our wheels inspecting pipes that you have no business, or you don't really care if we do it or not. I want to do things that bring value, because CCTV trucks aren't a inexpensive line item. They're a very valuable resource, and we need to make sure we're using them effectively. And then sharing the data with more departments, working with some of our development folks as we do, acceptance inspections, making sure that they can see all of the, they can see why it failed. They can see that video, share that with a contractor, and really just doing more and expanding and trying to add more efficiency. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Great job on the webinar. I want to say that I really appreciate your honesty during this webinar. I love the stories you're telling. And one thing I'd like to point out is the title of the webinar was Saving Thousands. And the reason that wasn't a specific number is because that was a byproduct of gaining the efficiencies that you did with these softwares. So thanks a lot, Chris. We are going to move into our Q&A section. Let's get our slide up so you guys can see our links. There we go. I did have a question just kicking it off about rebroadcasting this webinar. I know there were a couple attendees that said there were colleagues that couldn't attend. We will not rebroadcast this live, but we are recording it, and the webinar will be posted online probably sometime next week. There's a link here on the questions and links page that shows the URL where you can find the recorded webinar. All right, let's get to some of the good questions. Chris, there are a couple for you, and I know Corey and Jonathan are joining us, and there are a couple specific questions I think they'll be able to answer. So Chris, you mentioned during your presentation that you were looking, or the engineers were looking at some decision software support that might link with what you guys are doing now. Do you know what software that is they're interested in?
I do not. We're at the state of RFP on that.
Okay, but it's great to hear that other people are jumping on board, because I know you mentioned Esri's the backbone, and there are a lot of software solutions that help with decision making that are based on our Esri database. Okay, we had another question specific to your implementation, Chris. Our attendees want to know if you're using ArcGIS Portal or if you're using ArcGIS Online. What's that underlying technology?
That's a great question. I know that I've used ArcGIS Online, so I know we're using that. I do know we use some of the collector app. I'm not as familiar with Portal, but and I apologize for that. But like I said in the presentation, Public Utilities has its own data set, and then that's fed up to the city data set. So I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer to that question.
I think you did good. That's fine. You know you're using ArcGIS Online. Okay, let's move on. I think this one's probably a good one for Corey or Jonathan. We had a couple questions about other CMMS or asset management softwares that you might integrate with. Chris mentioned Cityworks, but are there others that you also work well with?
Hi, Krista, it's Corey. Definitely, we have similar integration with Cartograph, with Lucidity, with SAP, Maximo, Infor, and several other systems, and almost identical integration. So Raleigh's using some of the features of integration, but all of the features are available with almost all of those CMMS, AMS vendors.
Thanks, Corey. I have another one for you since you're online right now. In IT Web, do you need to copy the GIS data, or can you access the registry via REST services? They want to know how that data is being shared.
We literally just pull in the credentials, and once you've got your credentials for either your ArcGIS Online map or URL credentials for your web map plugged into the admin panel in IT Pipe, then the map is literally just consumed and a part of IT Pipe's web. So literally like once you have that map, once an agency has that map, that web map built and published, it's literally like a 2 to 3 minute process to make it part of the IT Pipe's web application.
Great, thank you. Chris, we have an attendee that would like you to spend a little time describing the process of your field crews. They want to know, what is that process when they need to TV a pipe, but the pipe doesn't exist in GIS? Do you have that happen?
So generally, because of the way we try to make everything planned, generally we're not going to create a work order. We're not going to create an unattached work order and send that to IT Pipes. So we would hope that the majority of, hey, there's no pipe behind this house, and that's where we want CCTV work done, we would hopefully that would get corrected, and then they would select the pipe and then send it on through the interface, which would then create the inspection in IT Pipes. If it's in the case of like a reactive work, or in the case of they're out there and an emergency type unplanned, they can call in, and through the web app that we have, the planner can add the pipe or manhole that they need right then, and when they refresh Cityworks, that pipe will show up. It may not be 100% exactly where it should be, but at least for the purposes of attaching a work order, they can attach that work order and then sync and bring that in. Or worst case, they can go ahead and create that inspection in IT Pipes and create a work order and punch that work order in. That last option gets a little hairy, but it can be done. But yeah, there's several options there. We try to catch the majority because if you can't make a work order for it, then we need to address that before we try to do an inspection of it. But the truck operator has a couple options of getting that inspection done and still associating it with a work order.
Great, thanks, Chris. Using the connectivity, the syncing tool, do you have any issues with connectivity?
We do. Even though we're in a pretty good 4G area, sometimes that happens. And, sometimes the operator just has to not sync while they're out in the field and wait till they come back.
And
oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And, sometimes, worst case scenarios, they just had to go find a city facility with, with city internet and, sync up and try to get the situation resolved.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we have some more questions coming in. Here's one. Chris, most likely this is going to be for you. Did you schedule pipe cleaning before having the CCT program in place? And was the task automatically assigned, now that you have IT Pipes and Cityworks, is it automatically assigned in IT Pipes or is it assigned in Cityworks? I think we have a lot of questions about how these integrations work.
Sure. So before Cityworks, the supervisor would say, hey, I need you to go do this work, but we didn't have a way to say, hey, here's your inspection. So we used that ARC map with GIS send, and the operator got to pick what pipe they did. Now, obviously they were working inside of an area, but they got to pick and choose how they went. With Cityworks, what happens is that you create the work order like you normally do for any asset, and the CCTV supervisor, the truth is that anyone can do this, but we don't tell them this. We let the CCTV supervisor pick the truck since it is related to an interface. Is the CCTV supervisor, when he picks that truck from the drop-down of usernames in Cityworks, and he hits save, as soon as that truck syncs, it's looking for that username and it pulls those inspections down as if you went to ArcMap, selected the pipe, and created the inspection. So it's pretty seamless in how that integration works, and you know, you don't have to retrain anybody. If you can assign work in Cityworks, you can assign work with the integration.
Perfect. Not to beat a dead horse, but there are a couple other questions about the process of moving from where you were and migrating to IT pipes and integrating with GIS. I know you mentioned towards the end of your presentation that that didn't take very much time as far as setting up the integration with Esri. Can you elaborate a little about any pain points or maybe no pain points in the integration and the connectivity with the GIS and then the IT pipes and the migration, that type of work, specifically with your data, like getting all the data in the right place and connected to the right systems?
Sure. So when we set up server's the first thing I would, that's huge because interfaces can't happen without it. Man, that's been so long ago. I don't think we had any real issues getting that in there, and we imported what we had at that point into server. We probably should have thought through that a little bit more and cleaned that up before you brought it in, but that's a hindsight 2020 type of observation. But as far as the ArcMap, we literally installed ArcMap desktop on every laptop, and we did have some trouble with the licensing because it did want to go out and authenticate itself, and we had licenses. But so we had to do some workarounds on getting it to not try to connect to the license server every day. That was before we had connectivity in the trucks. That was really, and then I think we used Sync to update the web map. Not a web map, but the GIS. We created a CCTV geodatabase, and I think we used Sync to keep that up to date because GIS would post any updates to that, and I think Sync is what updated that, or we did it manually. It may have been we did it manually, then we were able to get Sync to help us with that.
Well, it sounds like it was pretty non-painful.
Yeah, I don't have any nightmares from that era, so.
I love your choice of words. Nightmares. That's good. I mean, some people wake up in the middle of the night. I also loved how you mentioned the napkin earlier in the webinar. And many of the attendees probably know that I came from a water utility before working at Esri. And we say these things about napkins and linens and papers and sketches and notes jokingly, but they're all true.
It's very true. I'll walk by people's monitors and there's like Post-it notes of all this work that needs to be done, and I'm like, that's frightening. We need to get that.
I agree. Okay, we're just going to have a couple more questions and we'll let you go. Let's start with hopefully an easy one, wrapping things up. Are you using any kind of dashboards to help monitor inspections or view status of assigned works, that type of a thing?
We use, this is probably something we should put on our moving forward slide, but the only thing we use currently is the save searches and inboxes in Cityworks. So our CCTV supervisor does have he has a save search for all of his trucks that he submits to, so he knows what he submitted to each truck, what status they're in. And one thing I forgot to mention is the interface can be used, and we have it set up to assign a status of complete once it finishes and it sends the link to Cityworks. So he knows, hey, if it's open, it's still on the truck. If it's completed, they've done their work. And we also have that universal custom field as a column in the save search. So if he sees complete and he sees a link populate, he knows that work is done. If he sees complete no link, that means we got to fix something. But But yeah, we're using those safe searches, so he's able to track what work's being done. And our crews use pretty much the same safe search, so they know what's been assigned to them. And because the only thing they had to go to Cityworks for is for their equipment, labor, and material.
Thanks, Chris. Just to the audience, I know there are several questions coming in asking about what other software applications and solutions were considered and how the decision was made. Chris did mention during the webinar that these were in place when he started. Chris, I don't assume that you have any insight into answering those questions, so I'm not ignoring anyone, just letting you know that that's the case. We'll do one more question. Again, I think this is going to be for you, Chris. We have an attendee asking about your pipe segments and how you're identifying them, a little bit of best practice, and I think this person might be looking for some advice. Can you talk about your identification of pipe segments?
Sure. So our pipe segments and we run obviously from manhole to manhole, and we use a facility ID, and it's basically the first four are the abbreviation, so it's SGM, sewer gravity main, and then the last 4 or 5, however many numbers, are auto-generated. All of our facility IDs are auto-generated. And that helps us with the web apps, meaning that whoever creates that doesn't have to worry about using a bank of numbers. Beyond that, we were obviously recording the attributes. I'm not exactly sure if we got more detail on this question.
I think you did a good job. One more last minute. I know I promised the last one was the last one, but just one more. This one will be easy. You mentioned using Collector for ArcGIS. What type of tablets or smart devices are you using for Collector?
We pretty much moved to a Apple environment because NDMs just work better with that. But we also run it on our laptops as well with Surfaces and things.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Chris, so much for presenting today. Thank you, Corey and Jonathan, for being available for questions. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. Have a great evening.